When I was 10 years old, my dad thought it was a good idea for me to play the clarinet. And we had one, so that's what I started on. But my father was a saxophone player, and he had this beautiful saxophone. It was an old Selmer super balanced action that he had actually been playing for a while. And I just thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. So I didn't last long on clarinet. The first opportunity I had to switch over to the saxophone, I did that. And I was probably, 12 or 13 when I switched over to saxophone, but I didn't get super serious about it until really I was about 15 or 16 years old. That's when it kicked in and I started really, getting into the instrument. Probably the first thing that, inspired me to play the saxophone was my dad. My dad, played tenor saxophone, and he would, get dressed up on the weekends and, grab his horn and, go out to play gigs, and then he would come home late at night with pizza and, maybe some cake or something like that. I thought that was pretty cool. But really the thing that got me serious about saxophone playing was a teacher that I had in high school. Was about 15, 16 years old, and a guy named Wayne Richards was my teacher, and he had the most amazing saxophone sound that I've ever heard. And I just thought to myself, man, I would love to be able to create that kind of sound on the saxophone. He was a really inspiring teacher, very patient, and I think he stressed the right things, and we clicked, and so that's how I got really serious and really inspired to put in the time and energy and years of my life, to develop as a saxophone player. My biggest influences, that's a really tough one. My dad introduced me to jazz at a very young age, and we would listen to public radio in the car for hours, and he would tell me about different players, and we would play a little game where he would say who's playing saxophone, who's playing trumpet. So just that experience with my dad really was an incredible influence on me as a young, developing musician, just to start to understand that all of these different musicians, even if they play the same instrument, you can tell them apart if you listen, because they have a voice all their own. And I think that's what kind of inspired me to develop my own sound, because I one day wanted someone to be able to listen to me on the radio or on a record and say, oh yeah, that's Steve Cole. I'm influenced by a lot of different kinds of music. I started out playing classical music, contemporary classical music for saxophone. And so, the great virtuosos of the saxophone were, big influences on me. Frederick Hemke, Donald Cinta, Eugene Rousseau, Marcel Newell. And then, getting into, popular music and jazz. Back when I was, younger, Johnny Griffin, great Chicago tenor player. I just absolutely loved his approach and his sound and his energy. Of course, Cannonball Adderley, and, John Coltrane and Charlie Parker played a large role in just, rounding out my awareness of different approaches to saxophone and different approaches to music and improvisation. But I would say, as a contemporary jazz player, David Sanborn absolutely, like a blueprint for a gargantuan and very personal and expressive saxophone sound. I'm a big fan of, Grover Washington Jr. growing up, but also Eddie Harris and Junior Walker and Maceo Parker and, of course, Michael Brecker. Like I say, it's hard to, talk about which are my influences because there are so many. There are, people I play music with on stage now. I could be inspired by what they're doing, listening to other artists, Kirk Whalum or Eric Marienthal or Jeff Kashua or Kim Waters or Andy Snitzer. There's so much out there. There's so many different ways to go about it, and everyone is continually innovating. So yeah, there's no shortage of inspiration. My most memorable musical experience, one of them is the first time I played at the Hollywood Bowl. I performed at the Playboy Jazz Festival, and it was amazing when that stage turned around and there I was on that stage performing for 17,000 people. That was definitely one of those experiences where I thought to myself, wow, this is real, this is happening. And then I quickly, noticed that the only people I could see were the people in the table seating area, like right in front of the stage. All the other 17,000 people were kind of in the dark because the lights were in my eyes. And all I saw were the people in the, in the tables who were industry people who weren't really paying attention to anything other than, getting their waiter to bring them a bottle of wine. So there was that. That was interesting. But another, really important moment in music for me was I made an album with an orchestra and a rhythm section, and we did a live show with strings in Chicago. And I got to perform great music with tremendous musicians, and to hear that sound of the rhythm section and the strings and the beautiful arrangements, and to perform that live was really special. I play the Trevor James Signature Custom Raw tenor saxophone. The thing that sold me first before I knew much about the company or the people behind it, it's the sound. It just sounds amazing. It's rich, it's deep, it's centered, and it feels great. To move the air through the saxophone, it doesn't get in the way. It just does whatever you want it to do. The other thing is about the saxophone really has to do with the people behind it. There are incredibly dedicated and talented and passionate people who have worked tirelessly for years to develop this instrument. And, that's very evident when you look at the build quality, when you look at the components, when you look at those small little details on the saxophone that, no one else is doing. These saxophones are handcrafted. There are actual human beings that work with each and every one of them. And I've met them and I've watched them work, and it's so rare to see that kind of craftsmanship and that kind of passion. That's in the instrument. You can't, do that with a machine. So they're very, very special.
Thank you. Good night.